Hi everyone! So it's been such a long time since I've done a YouTube video, but I've recently been playing with some different techniques and I thought I'd show you all. So these are some that I've already done. Actually I was taking part in one of the it was a couple of challenges. Well, they're not really challenges, you know, you do the ATC trading card swap things, so like this. And the theme for them was, this one was rusty, and there was another one that I've taken part in recently which is also textures. So I've kind of done the same background because, well, they kind of, you know, it can be used for both. So yeah, so for the rusty background, so this one I've done a card, and I know you can buy like different like really gritty texture pastes and things. I haven't used that on this. I've been using Mod Podge and sand. So I thought, you know, I've got tons of it laying around. I thought I might as well use it rather than purchase you know, more pastes and things. So yeah, this is the background. As you can see, it is, I'll try and twist it around slightly. I haven't gone over the whole background in the mixture. But yeah, I've just kind of swiped it on in several different places. And it's kind of given it a really lovely kind of texture. You can see there is a little bit of a shine there, but not too much. The Mod Podge that I used for this was actually the matte one. Obviously I can't say what it'd look like with the gloss, but yeah, so these ones were done using the visible image sunflower stamps, as you can see, and I've done these ones for the Be Crafty ATC swap. So using the bees, this one I've actually stamped in the background. So yeah, I stamped and embossed it first, and then I applied the texture paste. Well, it's not texture paste, my own mix of texture paste. And yeah, I applied some glossy accents as well to this one, just to add a bit of shine as well in it. But yeah, I thought I'd show you how I created these backgrounds. I'm just going to show you a sort of basic background with a few stamped numbers in, but today I'm going to be using a few CI stamps, so stamps from Crafty Individuals. I'll just pop them out the way. Right, so these are the stamps that I'm going to use today. I'm using the Cheeky Seagull, which is CI 576, and the counting down in the background, which is 573. So I'm going to start by creating my topper with the Cheeky Seagull. And I'm going to mount him onto my flexi block here. These are the Chocolate Baroque flexi blocks. I use these all the time for stamping. I think they've really helped me because I suffer with sort of chronic pain and that. I found them really helpful, and I can usually stamp an image out fairly well with them now. Turn that over, as that's got a little bit of a mark on it. So I'm just going to stamp it with black VersaFine Clear ink. I'll position it about there. And push it down, let the ink seep into the card nicely. And then I'm going to grab a piece of plain paper and sprinkle. So I'm using the Wow Ultrafine embossing powder in clear. Just going to pop that on. I've got mine in a nice big tub. So I'm rather prone to knocking things over. Tip that back into the pot. And I'm now going to emboss this with my heat tool. I'm just lifting it up slightly from my messy mat because I don't want to melt that. My messy mat isn't actually a heat-proof mat. So I'm just going to keep embossing this until you can see it sort of changes, it goes like glossy. I do rather like watching it transform under the heat. It's rather mesmerising, I think. Right, so now that's done, I'm just going to grab my trimmer and just trim this down a little bit. Now I'd like to trim it quite close to the design because I'd like to see as much as the background as possible. And I might just trim a little bit off the bottom of the image. So you can see I've just taken a very thin slither off there. Just because I'd like to see as much of the background as possible, as I just said. Right, and now I'm going to colour the seagull in. I'm using the Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend pens here. So I'm going to go with a gold yellow blend on the beak and on the legs, because I think their legs are yellow, aren't they? Do you know what? I can't remember now. I should know. And I might add a little bit of coral shades on his beak, because they always seem to have like a little red mark on their beak, don't they? I always think it looks a little bit like tomato ketchup from pinching too many chips. I'm using the ice blue blend here, and I'm just going to go in on the eye, do a nice blue eye. And then I have muted brown, which I'm going to use to colour the woodwork in here. I'm going to go in with I think I'll go with the medium. I rather like these pens because, you know, you can, like all the shades are just in one pen, so you haven't got to spend ages hunting around for the right shade, and that is just all there, which is great. So I'm just going to darken up around the edges first. And then go over with the lighter end. And just go over quite roughly. Just blending in those darker tones. Those out the way now, and now I'm going to do the background. So I'm just going to grab my brush and my cup of water. So for the background I'm using distress inks. I'm using salvaged patina, vintage photo and candied apple. So I'm just going to add a little dab of the ink on my messy mat. And then I'm going to start by going all the way around the seagull with the salvaged patina. Quite like the sort of lighter tone all around the seagull. I'm not going to go right to the edge because I'm going to use the darker tones around the edge of the image. Right, now I'm going to go in with a bit of candied apple. So obviously you do end up with a little bit of red on, you know, rusty background. So I think the red sort of adds a nice touch to it. And then I'm going to add some vintage photo sort of all around the edge. Really shouldn't do that. I should just have a piece of kitchen roll at hand, shouldn't I? I should have some here. I always end up dabbing the water off onto my hand. It's not a good habit to get into. So I'm just blending the darker lines in to the salvage patina area. So I don't really want a solid line. Add some more water in there. And I think I'll leave it at that. So you can see it's quite a nice, quick and simple image to colour in. You don't really have to do a great deal to it. Goodness, excuse me. Right, so I'm now just going to clear off my area. And I'll grab my card for my background. So for this you do need a nice thick quality piece of card. I'm actually using the Craft UK Limited Premier Collection, sorry, and this is the 300 GSM. So I use this for literally everything. I think it's a great sort of, you know, good quality cardstock, and it does take water quite well, which is great in this method. Now what I'm going to do is just take my seagull image. I'm going to place it upside down, just roughly where my image will go. I'm just going to pick it up so I can see it properly. Right, and I'm going to grab a pencil and just draw around it. This is just a rough guide so you can see where it's going to go. So you're not putting loads of mixture all in the centre, because it sort of wastes it a little bit. So put the seagull to the side. I'm now going to grab my salvaged patina ink pad again, and I'm just going to drag it over the paper. So now don't worry too much if you have white space. A lot of this area you will sort of fill in with the sandy mixture, so it's just to sort of give it a little bit of a base like that. Right, now we're going to mix up our sandy mixture. So I have here just a plain white tile. You can pick these up fairly cheaply, but I think we actually found these. Somebody had chucked a load out the front of the house with a please take sign, so of course we took a few. They're quite handy to have because you can use them. I often use them to pop acrylic paints and stuff on, and use it as a bit of a paint palette. So here I'm using the matte finish Mod Podge, and I'm using a palette knife. I'm just going to pop a little bit on to my tile. So I'm going to stick with about that for now. We can always mix some more up if we need it. Pop that over to the side, and I'm now going to grab my sand. So this is just children's play sand. I'd recommend not taking it from the beach because it is actually illegal to take sand from the beach. So yeah, you can buy sand quite cheaply online. I think you can buy sort of a 500 kilogram of sand for sort of under a £5. So, and I think it still works out cheaper than buying like a tub of grit paste. And of course then if you have quite a nice stash of it, you can make as much of it up as you like. I'm just mixing that in really well. Might add a tiny bit more sand there. I do rather like keeping sand in my craft stash. I do use it rather a lot actually. It's nice if you're doing sort of beachy cards, you know, you can add a little bit of sand to sort of the just areas, just to give it a bit of interest. Right, I'm now going to add a little bit of Brusho. So this is the dark brown Brusho. Obviously remember with this, I don't know if you've used Brushos before, but less is definitely more with this. I think I've only recently got back into using them. I've had them so many years, and I kind of gave up on them for a little while because I just couldn't get on with them. Which was a shame because I think I've seen so many people do such lovely things with them. But then a few weeks back I sort of decided, well, I'm going to give them another try. And now I use them on most cards. So I'm really enjoying sort of playing with them again. Right, so that's my mixture. I know it doesn't look sort of much at the moment. It does darken up when this dries, and we will add some more anyway later on. So just grab your piece of card again, and I'm just going to go in sort of on and do the larger areas that I want filled to start with. So rather a large piece there. I'm just going to smear it on. Turn it around a bit. So I quite like, rather than just having clumps, I quite like sort of smaller smears of it. So it's quite finely smeared in some areas, while others are sort of quite thick. So just kind of even it, you know, just go with it. I think the thing that I like about this is every one that you do will be completely different. Even if you try and get the grit in the same place, you know, there's no guarantees it will come out the same, which I rather like. So I try and do it so that the card is balanced. So, you know, if you sort of put it in one corner, try and work in the opposite. I think that's always quite a huge thing with card making. Yeah, just smear it on. Add a bit more there. Maybe it's knowing when to stop, isn't it? I'm not very good at thinking, yeah, that will do. I know I'm putting some in the middle there, but it doesn't matter too much. And yeah, I think maybe I'll stop there. Now this mixture here, I'm just going to leave it on there to dry. I think it's so much easier just leaving it to dry, and then it just peels off. I'm going to pop that out of the way. Don't particularly want to get that on anything. And now I'm going to use my heat gun to dry this off. Now don't worry too much if this starts to bubble. I think the bubbling kind of creates quite interesting effects. So unfortunately I will be using the heat gun quite a lot here. But you could obviously leave this to dry, sort of maybe make a batch of them overnight. But to be honest, I prefer just to speed it up, because at the end of it, I think because I will be spraying it with some more water in a little while, which you will see shortly. I think it does need to be left. I tend to like to leave them overnight to dry then, because they do get quite wet. So hopefully you can see it sort of bubbled up a little bit in areas. I'm hoping I don't go off the camera too much. Obviously be careful with your fingers as well, because the heat gun is on the card for so long, it does obviously get quite hot, so just be a little bit careful. You can see as it's drying, it does go quite a bit darker. So it doesn't have to be right dry, but it does need to be dry enough to be able to continue to work with. So as long as it's not tacky, once you've finished, you should then be able to carry on working with it. And see this area, because it's quite thick, it is bubbling up a little bit there. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. I'm not too worried about it bubbling. I think it looks rather interesting once it's dried. Just turn this round and do this side now. Just see if that's sort of dry enough to work with. No, that still needs a bit of drying off in that area. So I'm going to pop the heat gun back up on here. Because that area was quite thick, it just needs a little bit longer to dry. Hopefully that's now done. So as I said, as long as it's not completely tacky, you should then be able to carry on. Now for the next bit, I'm just going to grab my glass mat out. So because I can't, I'd recommend maybe having a heat-proof mat underneath. Like I said, I haven't, so yeah, I'm just popping the mat on because this bit does get quite messy and the card will sort of absorb it all and be quite flimsy. So I find it easier to dry it on the glass mat. So I'm now going to just spritz this with water. I'm using my mini distress sprayer from Tim Holtz. So I've put off getting one of these for ages, but actually Mum got one fairly recently because my mum also does some crafting, and you know, I think they're great. It's a really nice fine mist. So I'm now just going to go in with my Brusho, the dark brown again. And remember, again, less is more. You can always keep adding, but once it's on there, it's not so hard. It's not so easy to take away. So I'm going to sprinkle most of this onto the sandy areas because I'll then spritz it a little bit more in a minute. And when I spritz it, the water sort of pushes it off the sand and into the other areas. So I'll put that to the side. So you can see all the different pigments in the Brusho is kind of coming out now. I'm going to go in with a little bit more. I do rather like the fact that I think because there are so many different pigments in these Brushos, you know, in say the brown and stuff, there's like red tones and sort of slightly, although it's dark brown, there's kind of terracotta, which is great, especially when creating for like a nice rusty background. Right, so you can spritz that a little bit more. Now you can see why I said you needed a nice thick cardstock. So have some kitchen roll, and obviously if you get sort of pools of water in area, you can kind of dab that off just a little bit. I'm going to go in with a bit more actually. So you can just keep going until you're sort of happy with, you know, what it sort of looks like. I don't like to go too dark on mine, but actually I think I'm quite pleased with that. So I'm now going to just dab off some bits where there's lots of water, so otherwise it will take forever to dry. So as you can see, my card is actually quite saturated here, so it would just bend. That's why I wanted to do it on the glass mat. I'm just going to semi-dry it while it's laying down. Once it's dried off a little bit, I'd recommend picking it up, and then you can just dry it off a little bit better, sort of while it's in the air, and it dries it through much easier. Again, just mind your fingers because it does get very hot. So now that's dry, I'm just going to clear this board off and get rid of this. And now, actually, where's my brush gone? I'm going to put my tape back on that so I don't knock that over. And I'm now just going to go in with some more salvaged patina. So I'm going to put a little bit on my mat. And I'm just going to go in again and sort of darken some of them areas up. Sometimes it's quite nice to go over the brown areas and add some patina. If you find, say, on this area, for example, I'd really like a little bit of patina there, what you can do is just scrape a little bit off. So you could use a craft knife. I'm not sure where my craft knife is at the moment, but I'm just using a pokey tool here. And you can just scratch some of the surface off. You can see some of the layers coming off there. So I'll get rid of all that loose sand. And then you can just go in and add some of the salvaged patina there. Tell you what I did mean to do. I've had originally planned to do some stamping in the background of this, and I totally forgot. So I might just see if I can add it now. So I'm using the counting down here, which was 573 by Crafty Individuals. So I'm just going to pick out sort of just some of the random numbers. It's not going to stamp out that easily now because it is quite textured. I have done another one. I'll show you this background. So this one I actually stamped before I applied all the sandy mixture. I stamped it in VersaFine Clear and embossed it with clear embossing powder. But you know, I'm hoping maybe we can add just a little bit now. So I'm just going to stamp. I'm not even going to mount this stamp because I want to get it sort of in between the sand and sort of really push it in. Just going to hold it in my hand and then just see if I can push the image in. So you can see you get a few numbers out there, not a huge amount, but you sort of get the idea anyway. Sometimes when you find these rusty old metal pieces washed up on the beach, they sometimes have like printed numbers and things in. So that's the kind of look that I'm going for at the moment here. Just going to ink up, just inking up just random little bits on the stamp. So I don't need it all. So I quite like how it's coming out here because it's quite sort of bitty. So it is sort of working. Maybe go for there. Where else can I go? I'll go for a bit up the top there, I think. What section shall I go for? I think I'll just go for that section again. I rather like that little bit. So just so you can see I'm really pushing it in here. So it has come out quite nicely. I want to add a tiny bit more maybe to that area, because that first bit didn't stamp quite as well as I'd liked. So that's a bit better. And where else can I go? Maybe go for this bit. I might do that just here. Right, I'm quite pleased with how that's come out. So you sort of get the gist I might just fill in, because I'd quite like that 6 showing a little bit more. So I might just grab a pen. I'm using a Micron black fine liner pen here. And I'm just going to fill it in a bit better. Like that. Now, what I'll just clean this off because I probably will end up putting this down. I just used some my misted water and a rag to clean it off with. This was actually my son's old t-shirt that I cut up, and it's worked a real treat for cleaning stamps up. Now, I would actually leave this to dry probably a good few hours, because obviously because it has been saturated so much, you know, you want it to dry out properly and not sort of, if you stick it down at the moment, it'll probably make your other layers of card damp and it would then buckle. But I will show you what to do next, because I have actually already got some pieces left already made up. So I actually done a live demo yesterday for Crafty Individuals, and I've done the exact same card. So this was the one that I done live there. As you can see, I've mounted the seagull onto a piece of black, and I should have some black card to mount this on. Hopefully that fits. Yep. So I'm going to stick that down. I'm using some Kalau glue here just to mount it onto black. So this one's actually been drying sort of overnight, so it shouldn't sort of buckle or anything now. Just make sure that's all nicely lined up. It should be okay. Just pop some pressure on that. Right, I'm just going to clean my fingers off a little bit because I don't want to get any ink on the white card. I'm usually very good at that. So I have here a pre-folded 5x7 card blank. I'm now just going to stick this on. I like to go all around the edges and then a little squiggle all over the back of it. And let's just see if that's straight. Needs to move up. I do like this glue because you do get a little bit of wiggle room on it, so it gives you a chance to sort of line it up properly. So I'm just putting some weight on that while it dries, and then I'm going to stick the topper on. Obviously, I said I already mounted this onto black card ready, and for this I'm going to use pin flare. So you could use any silicone glue for this, but because it's quite raised in areas, I want the glue to really take to it. And you could always lift it up just to add a bit of dimension to your card. I rather like doing that. So I've popped some of the pin flare into a little syringe here. Oh, that bit stuck to me. And I'm just going to put a few dollops of glue on the back. Like that, and then pop that sort of in the middle there. Just going to lift it up to make sure that I've stuck it down sort of straight. So I think I'll stick it about there. No, come up a little bit. So yeah, that's the finished card. So you can see it's quite a fun technique, I think, to play with. I've used it on quite a few things now, and I will be using it a lot in the future. I think there's so many possibilities that, you know, you can use with it. I know Crafty Individuals sell like a really lovely kind of old fishing boat that would look lovely with this technique behind it. You know, you could use, if you've got a vintage car, maybe a vintage train stamp, which Crafty Individuals also sell. I think that would all work with it. And like you saw, I've also done the bumblebee and flowers with it, and that's worked really well too. Right, well, thank you all for joining me. Obviously, I'll try and do another video soon. I won't leave it as long this time. I always say that though, and then a year's gone by suddenly. But yeah, hopefully I'll be back soon with another video demonstration. But yeah, thank you all for joining me. Take care all. Bye.